0.7, we're getting stuck straight into the meat of the matter. We're going to be taking a look at the different sectors that were addressed in yesterday's media engagement between the president and the Yankee fraternity. Now, questions were asked of the economy, questions were asked of corruption, questions were asked of supreme leadership. Oral also quite high up on the agenda, but we'll start off this way. Let's get into what the president had to say when he was asked about the city, how stable the city is going to be given what we've seen in the last few months. You know that the city had a good showing at the beginning of the year, settling around some 10 cities to the dollar. Fast forward a couple of months later, we're hovering in the 12-city region. Well, the president said that where the city was left sometime last year at 16 cities to a dollar was the city being highly undervalued, but also at 10 cities per dollar, it's also a high value there. Somewhere in the middle is the true value of the city, but don't take my word for it. Take a listen to what His Excellency John Dramani Mahama had to say.
We recognize a very steep appreciation in the value of the city in response to the reforms that we were carrying out. And for those of you who listened to me, there was one occasion where I said, people were asking whether it will go below 10. And I said, it is dropping, but it will find its true value. It was undervalued at 16, and it probably is overvalued at 10. But somewhere between there, we have the real value of the city. And so I believe that it is about stopping rapid depreciation of the currency. Almost every currency would realize either depreciation or appreciation in the course of a year. But when you have steep depreciation of about, like we had in 2024, 25% depreciation in the currency in the first half of the year, it makes planning difficult. And so, yes, Bank of Ghana has been intervening in the forex market, but they've withdrawn. And what happened was that because of the rapid appreciation in the value of the city, we saw an exponential increase in imports, because then people could buy cheaper dollars and so they could import more, which is a natural economic phenomenon. But on the other side, exporters are not happy because they get less cedis for what they export. And so every country tries to find out a balance where exporters are able to do good business and importers are not overburdened by high forex rates. Where that lies, I don't know. I'm not a central bank. But the cedi is making an adjustment, and I believe that it will settle at a certain rate, and we will make sure that any depreciation that occurs in the value of the cedi is within a margin of about 5% per annum. That is what we target. And so for now, there's still speculation. It's also coincided with a period where we saw a reduction of 50% in remittances, because citizens in the diaspora were taken aback by the rapid appreciation of the cedi. And so if somebody was building a house, if he was going to send $100,000, it meant that he was losing a certain percentage of that 100,000. And most of them would decide to adopt a wait-and-see attitude and say, oh, no, as for cedi, it's not possible that the cedi can regain its value to that extent. By all means, it will go up again. So I'll hold back my remittance until the cedi goes back up. So we saw a 50% reduction, but there were also some other factors. There were some money transfer companies that were collecting cedis abroad and not repatriating collecting dollars abroad and not repatriating the dollars. There were other, which we're investigating, there were other cases where people applied through the commercial banks for foreign exchange to cover imports. And those monies are transferred to pay for imports, but the imports never came into Ghana. And we've studied a period of 4 years And over the period of 4 years, about $42 billion was taken out of this country without the corresponding imports coming into the country. And so we started sanctioning some banks, and soon we'll start interrogating some individuals who ostensibly took money out against imports but never brought those imports. We want to know what happened and if there was wrongdoing to sanction whoever it is. While we work to stabilize our economy and improve the value of our currency, we must protect that currency, because a strong CD is good for all of us. But when that happens, some people try to take advantage of it. And I think that we should all condemn anything like that.
All right, again, that was the president yesterday at that media engagement, answering some questions to do with the economy, and particularly to do with the city and whether or not it is to remain stable, as we are hoping that it does. And so we're expanding the tentacles of this conversation. Let me say good morning and a very warm welcome to Dr. George Domfe. He's a development economist at the University of Ghana. Doc, hello, good morning.
Good morning, my sister.
Hope you're doing well.
By His grace, everything is very well with me here.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. We're seeking to dissect some of the answers that were given by the President of the Republic yesterday during his media engagement. Your preliminary thoughts on the proceedings yesterday, and then we get into the nitty-gritty concerning the economy.
Let me thank you very much for this opportunity and say very good morning to our listeners. Yes, I think it was very good. Sometimes they always say he who is laying the path does not know his back is crooked, and therefore it behoves of those following to constructively exchange ideas with whoever that is leading. And one platform that the leader can listen and hear what is happening is through such engagements. And so let me say that it was a very useful engagement he had. Yeah. And he talked about his government's achievements, what he came to meet, and what he is doing to sustain the very good things he came to meet. And those things that were not going well, what his government is doing to make sure they get better. To, at the end of the day, ensure every Ghanaian lives comfortably. I think the engagement, was very good.
Certainly, Doc. Thank you for your preliminary thoughts. Now, how sustainable do you assess the government's current economic recovery plan, also in light of global economic uncertainties? We think about what's happening, for example, as far as trade tariffs, tariffs imposed by the U.S. and all of that. How does that sit with you, how the government is going about its recovery plan?
Yeah, let me say and let me draw listeners' attention to the fact that 2022 things didn't go well with the Ghanaian economy, mainly because of the external, situation. And as so most of what we are seeing today, I think today's global market is far better. A lot of things happened that didn't help the economy. And so based on that, we, as a country, put together a development framework that we sold it to IMF May 2023, and they accepted it. That is a PCPEC, and whose COVID recovery economic program. And we put this together because if you look at the whole structure, between 2020 and 2022, things didn't go well at all with the economy. It first started with the COVID-19, and then later Russia-Ukrainian crisis. And so that reform package has what we call quantitative assessment criteria, and these are the pillars. For example, ensuring fiscal consolidation, in other words, raising more revenue and trying to control your expenditure, and most other things, and raising more reserves, and so we started all these since June 2023. And I mean, the program was approved May 2023, and it's supposed to go through 3 years. We are so as we are working with IMF, and we've been doing well since. And so I see from where I sit, some trade tariffs and all those things wouldn't affect us so much because per the program, we are supposed to create more revenues internally. So last year, if you look at what happened to our economy, we were hoping to rake in 176 billion. That was total revenue projections. At the end of the year, we had over 180 billion. So we exceeded our revenue targets, and this is one of the things that the program is seeking to do. And so I'm sitting here, I can see that, yes, we will have a little bit of challenge from Trump, trade tariffs, and some other negative things happening on the global market. But I have all the hope that by the end of the program, Ghana would have become a better country.
Certainly. Now, today we're seeing a stabilization in the price of goods and services, with inflation dropping significantly from some 23.8% in December 2024 to some 11.5% in July 2025. In fact, it's the lowest rate recorded since December 2021. Now, could the recent drop in inflation be attributed solely to government policies, or are there other external factors at play?
Yes, so to answer this, you ask yourself, where was Ghana, for example, before the onset of Russia-Ukrainian crisis? Inflation was doing very well. For example, Ghana recorded 7.6% rate September 2019, and that happened to be the lowest since March 1992. And so we were doing very well until COVID came. When COVID came, even January 2022, Ghana's inflation was 13.9, January 2022. But as soon as February, Russia-Ukrainian crisis started, inflation started going up because the global market, a barrel of crude oil that used to be sold at $72 immediately went as far as $121. And so at the end of the year, we saw, and CD also depreciated about 38% during the year. And so at the end of the year, 2022, inflation hit 54%, and that happened to be the highest inflation in 27 years. Of course, it wasn't only limited to Ghana. U.S. recorded the highest inflation during that year in 40 years. UK, the highest in 40 years. Germany, the highest in 70 years. So it was global. Today, as we speak, we have seen global market price for oil reduced to $68 this morning. That is the price, $68. Last year, it was hovering mostly around 80 to 90. And so that has contributed to the drop in pump prices. Today, if you go, you see the pump prices hovering around between 12 and 14. That is very good. And one thing that has not been helpful is when prices of fuel, go up. Indeed, Ghana, we are also exporter. Yeah, and so anytime it goes up, our ABS, the annual budget funding amount that comes to the budget stream, increases, but which is good. But unfortunately, the impact on the ordinary Ghanaian becomes, very, very bad and horrible because Ghana, after the petroleum sector was deregulated, Ghana government doesn't import oil anymore. The refined oil, as we say, is rather BDCs who will go and buy, and they are private entities, and sell to the oil marketing companies. And so if they go and prices on the global market have gone up, then definitely they have to push it to the OMCs who also extend it to the consumers. And when prices, when pump prices go up, transportation goes up, everything goes up, and Ghanaians suffer. And so today, one of the significant reasons why inflation is dropping so much is also, apart from the gains from the appreciation of the cedi, it's also because of the fall in the global market price for the oil. And so that is very, positive. And what is happening here, apart from, the PCPEC is doing what we have to do as a country and as a government we are doing. But because of our dependence on our global market, everything that happens there affects us. We are so vulnerable.
Cecily, Doc, are you still with us? Dr. Domfe? All right, I suspect we've lost Dr. George Domfe there on the line. We'll look to reconnect with him, and he has been chiming in on some of the answers that were given by the president at yesterday's media engagement. That is what we're seeking to dissect, and I do hope we're able to raise him back on the line. A question that has been burning for many of you has to do with the stabilization of the city. President Mahama had something certainly to say about that. According to him, his economic managers are doing what they are able to do to stabilize the currency to make for more effective economic planning. Time check. It is some 14 minutes to the top of the hour, 9 a.m. This is still 3FM Sunrise or 3FM 92.7. Let's also take a listen to more of what the president had to say. When we reconnect with Doc, we'll get some more perspectives on yesterday's engagement.
I've been reluctant to implement a state of emergency in the Galamsey fight because we've not exhausted the powers we even have without a state of emergency. We have the opportunity to arrest anybody, to confiscate any such thing. There are laws for forest protection and all that give us enough powers to be able to act. Implementing a state of emergency might sound nice, but it should be the last extreme, the last resort. So for now, let's exercise all the powers we have. And if it becomes necessary for a state of emergency, then we'll look at it. It means we have to go to Parliament. The president can't just declare a state of emergency without, going to Parliament, because there's a limit to how long you can maintain that state of emergency. And so I believe that we still have leverage to continue to fight Galamsey without necessarily implementing a state of emergency. It means that we have to delineate the areas where the state of emergency is operational. And if you look at the area where Galamsey is taking place, it covers several districts of our country. And so we would do it if it becomes necessary. But for now, I think that we've given the security services enough. Investigations now with regards to oral. Send our kind MPP address some of the Shishabi by IMRA say Abani Woody case be home say Ebia Wafesika na Bibia or Aquina Ubetimiaka say you any Abani case now
3FM 92.7 Urban Lifestyle Radio Station.
All right, and again, that was President John Dramani Mahama, this time talking about the issue of declaring a state of emergency. Let's now get on to some education, and let's talk with the Executive Director, Africa Education Watch, Kofi Asare. Kofi, hello, good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Hope you're doing well.
Very well, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us on the program. We're talking about yesterday's media engagement between the president and the journalist who had some burning questions for him. Yesterday, what did you make of the engagement in its entirety? And then we'll get into the nitty-gritty as far as education is concerned.
Well, I think it's a positive move to engage journalists. They report on what happens across the country, and journalists speak the language of the people across sectors, across geographical boundaries. And so having an engagement with them is one way to, apart from gauging the temperature in relation to progress on issues and pressing issues, also affords an opportunity for the president to explain where information is limited in respect of policy progress. So I think it was a useful engagement. I would have wished, as I keep saying in the past couple of years, that we would have a similar meet the press, not just the president meet the press, but also the ministers meet the press. We'll have a similar one for civil society organizations. Because, as I always say, the media are mostly generalists. They are generalists. Okay?
Right.
They report from archaeology to zoology. But for civil society organizations, many at times we are specialists. If you are health, you are only health. I know you will have health journalists, environmental journalists, but generally,
That's right.
Journalists report everything. So it is my expectation that in future that this proposal will find a place in will find space within the strategy of any president, so that beyond engaging the media, we also engage civil society actors. But basically, it's a good idea to engage.
Certainly. Now, yesterday, was there anything that you were hoping to hear from the president that you did not hear? You make the point that these engagements are really general, not specialist in nature. So I can imagine that there were maybe some burning items as far as education is concerned that certainly didn't get the spotlight.
Yes, there were many items that I wanted to hear the president give an update on, because it's difficult to obtain information on. The most important one was when the Ministry of Finance is going to give financial clearance for the recruitment of teachers. We have schools in this country where 2 teachers are handling an entire primary school. Okay, if you go to Pani Primary School in Tripoli right now, if you go to Pani Primary School right now, 2 teachers are handling the entire primary school. If you go to Gilma Primary School right now, only 1 teacher is handling the entire primary school. This is just in Tripoli. I don't want to continue. So the teacher deficit is huge. But we've traveled 9 months into the year with no indication of when financial clearance will be given to recruit teachers. And so I would have wished that the president give us some update on that. The second is teachers who were recruited last year and have not received their fair salary yet. Some of them have been working for 9 months. And we know that the government announced efforts to do, announced its processes to do manpower audits, and all that. It's been some time now. And it's difficult for teachers to teach for so long without a salary, yet expect them to deliver. I would have expected that the president would have spoken on that. But I didn't hear any comment on that. Those were 2 key things that I thought the president, that I thought media should have been interested in asking for the president to give us a response on.
Certainly. Now, another area, or an area that the president did touch on, was the no-fee stress policy. He talked about its launch some 3 months ago, refunding fees to some 120,000 first-year students in public tertiary institutions in Ghana. I'm not sure that, Kofi, you and I have had a chance to actually talk about the no-fee stress policy. So I want to ask how effective you believe government's no-fee stress policy is or has been in improving access to education for disadvantaged students and students as a whole.
I call the no-fee stress at this stage a pilot, because the government announced a policy and decided to reimburse students who were admitted under the previous administration to start the policy with. I was expecting that the government would have started the policy with the 2025-2026 batch of tertiary entrants. But we decided to start immediately. So I call this phase a pilot. Pilot, you want to find out how it will go, identify the rough edges, discuss how to smoothen it, and then plan the way forward. So you see that now it's a refund. Meanwhile, the policy itself should be a financial aid that should be available to you at the point of admission and not refund.
Right.
So the targets are people who don't have money to pay the admission fee. So another admission letter is a condition. Those are the targets, not a refund. Because by the time you get to refund, you're already out of school because you couldn't honor your admission letter. It's a condition. So, so far it's a pilot because we are refunding those who entered school when the government was not in power. About 120,000 students so far have received reimbursements. Some are still going through verification in the process of payments. I attended the no fee stress stakeholder engagement last week, so I'm privy to this information.
Right.
My only comments, I have two concerns about the no fee stress, which I shared with the government when we attended the forum at Fiesta Royal. The first is that no fee stress, as it is now, is not covering the full academic cost of tertiary, as it was promised. It is covering parts of the academic-related fees, not the full. So a student who has admission to learn medicine at UHAS, for instance, is having about 60% to 65% of their academic fee paid by no fee stress, per the pilot ongoing, not 100%. And we raised an issue with that. We have submitted to the government that it is important for the government to find money and cover the full academic-related fee as promised. Other than that, poor students who could not honor their admission conditions will still struggle because they are so poor. The second concern we raised was the need to ensure that there's a reliable funding source for the no fee stress. It's early days yet, we agree. The minister has indicated that he's pushing for a 2.5% commitment of oil revenues to finance not just no fee stress, but student loan plus, and then free tertiary for PWDs and public scholarships. So the entire student financial aid system is being aimed, for financing under the 2.5% oil revenues. That's if the minister proposal succeed. But we all know that the big push has taken over oil revenues this year, per the amendment to the PRMA.
That's right.
I don't know what will happen, but we are looking on the oil data. Inflows from petroleum revenues plummeted in the first half of the year by about 55%. So it doesn't look too reliable to bang the hopes on oil revenues. So we have to see where the alternatives are. So those are the two issues that we have that are no fee stress. But apart from that, in the first 5 months of a policy, at its inception stages, the progress that they have made is very, 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 very significant and must be acknowledged. 120,000 students received funding in just 5 months since the budget was read. Not even 5 months yet.
That's right.
A huge achievement. And so we hope that the stakeholder engagement we had and the feedback that we made from stakeholders and beneficiaries are taken in good faith by the government to improve the continuous implementation of the no fee stress policy.
Certainly, some good points there made by yourself, Kofi. Now, let's, from the tertiary level, let's go to the secondary school level, and then we'll end on the primary level, and then we'll wrap up on the conversation. The president yesterday said that, as of now, a staggering 3.5 billion Ghana cedis have been dedicated to the free SHS. He also talks about decentralizing the feeding policy to allow the management of schools to make their own feeding arrangements to provide students with quality meals. What did you make of that?
3.5, that's factual. In the budget, 3.5 billion was allocated to the free senior high school program. Not the highest ever since the policy started. The second highest was somewhere in the region of 3 billion, 2.9 billion or so. So significantly, yes, we have the highest ever allocation to free senior high school. It has affected the amount of money we allocate for feeding. And so directly it has impacted on the quality and the quantity of feeding. If you look at the financing perspective. So that's correct, and that is great. On the issue of decentralized feeding, it is quite, I think that is an issue. There's an issue to be resolved. If you remember, the NDC promised in this manifesto that it will decentralize feeding under the free senior high school. The Minister of Education announced that it has made a U-turn and that it will not fully decentralize feeding in senior high schools, citing instances of mismanagement of food by some schools that they have a report on. I have not seen the report, but that was based on reports that they have from some schools and the mismanagement and siphoning of food. They decided that it won't be in the interest of students and the government to fully decentralize the feeding. And so they were going to decentralize part of the menu and not all of the menu. So it is not entirely accurate that feeding has been decentralized, as His Excellency said. The current rate of decentralization of feeding is not too different from what existed under the previous governments. The perishables, the other things are decentralized. The Ministry of Education is yet to come out with a comprehensive policy document on what it intends to do with feeding, whether it wants to partially decentralize moving forward. Let me put it this way. The Ministry of Education has to come out to tell us whether what is currently happening is a temporary mechanism or this is a permanent policy they want to come on.
Right.
No. But the minister has indicated that the ministry will not fully decentralize again, but to partially decentralize. So that decentralization thing is still an issue that hasn't been fully resolved. We are of the opinion that the decentralization was rushed. Adequate mechanisms for accountability, monitoring of stock, etc., were not put in place. Even procurement capacity in senior high schools were not enhanced. Record keeping, stores management protocols were not put in place properly to warrant the decentralized, the immediate decentralization of feeding that happened in March when the government took over, in February, March. So we knew that there would be accountability issues. So we will always recommend that it is best to decentralize the feeding to senior high schools, but make sure that the accountability mechanisms, monitoring mechanisms are in place so that you can monitor stock, monitor delivery, monitor everything sent to the schools. Even in Accra, you can monitor from every school and hold headmasters accountable. That should be done before decentralized feeding is done. But we'll continue to advocate for fully decentralized feeding in senior high schools.
Certainly. And finally, let's talk about basic education. The president yesterday said that basic education has received its highest budget allocation in almost a decade. He said, reflecting our determination to rebuild the educational ladder from the ground up, with some 564.6 million cedis allocated so far for textbooks. He says that this is going a long way to address long-standing challenges in the system, particularly those caused by the reduced funding of the recent past. Would you say that that's enough to address the major challenges facing foundational learning in Ghana's primary schools today?
Financing lies at the core of the challenges in basic education. Resources for improving quality, enhancing equitable access cannot be available unless financing is significantly available. So the president's statement is correct. About 9 billion cedis was allocated for basic education. That's the highest in the history of Ghana. And that's close to 22% of the education budget. The 22% also is the highest post-COVID, and one of the highest since the free senior high school policy was introduced. But prior to free senior high school, basic education was receiving way more than the 22%. So the 9 billion to basic education, yes, is correct. The 9 billion even excludes the 1.2 billion that the government has allocated for the construction of 1 KG, 1 primary, 1 junior high school in every district across the country and furniture under the District Service School Fund. It excludes that. So yes, financing has been done. But But beyond financing, the first issue I raised, we have basic education receiving the highest financing ever in our history, yes. But we have basic schools not having adequate teachers because the allocation is not yet seeing execution, especially on compensation. It is a worry. And that's why I started by saying that we are not happy that there are many schools, especially in the underserved regions, Savannah, Northeast, Northern, Western North, and Uti. There are schools where 2 teachers are teaching the entire primary school. Because they are not teachers, it's because the Ministry of Finance is not giving clearance for us to be able to spend the 9 billion that was allocated for basic education. So beyond the allocation, Mr. President has to expedite action on what we call releases so that we can have a positive budget execution. Allocation alone is not enough without execution. Another issue I want to talk about is textbooks. Yes, an allocation was made for the procurement of textbooks. By March this year, less than half of textbooks required in our basic schools in the 4 core subjects were available. By March of this year, we did a study in 20 districts, and that would be private. There are schools in Accra. For example, there's a school called the STEM Basic School in East Legon here, near the TV service. If you know it's near on the road, there's the Gatimani Cemetery. The huge building that the program member, the STEM Basic School. That school is the biggest basic school in Ghana. It has no single textbook. You understand? It has no single textbook. So the textbook deficits are huge. We are yet to see the budgetary allocation for textbooks, including 400 million under GET fund for basic school textbooks. We are yet to see it actualize through textbooks.
Right.
I'm not too sure what the strategy is. The government said it will revise the curriculum this year. I don't know whether it intends to revise the curriculum, impact textbooks before printing them, or it will print textbooks in the interim, use them, or it will print textbooks, and then when the curriculum is revised, supplementary textbook will be developed. But the situation when it comes to textbooks is not great.
Right.
Parents are buying textbooks in many schools, including schools that are close to us in this Legon here, public basic schools. So if you are poor, you have to buy your own textbooks. That is not what the free compulsory universal basic education provision in Article 38 of our Constitution says. And so we want to implore the government to expedite the processes in procuring textbooks for our basic schools.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time this morning, Kofi. We're always grateful for your expert opinion on these issues. Kofi Asare is the Executive Director, Africa Education Watch. But I've got a special guest in the studio with me this morning. Shamima Muslim is the Deputy Presidential Spokesperson, and she's here in flesh and blood. Shamima, good morning.
Indeed. Good morning. It's been a bit.
It's been a minute.
I miss you on TV, though.
Okay.
I think you should do TV more.
You have my radio community come after you.
No, you do both. So you give us TV and then you come and do.
Okay, a little bit of
radio,
this, a little bit of that. Okay. What time did you get to bed then yesterday? Because that engagement went on for quite a while.
Indeed. Actually got into bed around. It was almost 1. It was almost 1, and I had to be up early for your TV program.
Of course.
So I'm feeling a bit sleepy.
A very busy lady indeed. Let me also very quickly acknowledge the presence of Stephen Osei Achiang, political and communication expert and senior lecturer at UEW. And he'll also be giving us his perspective on how yesterday's engagement went. Mr. Osei Achiang, hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning, Helen.
Thank you so much for joining us. Yesterday, we lost you on the program due to technical difficulties, but I'm sure today we'll be able to have a more fruitful engagement.
Sure, yes, I'm hopeful.
All right. Thank you so much. Let me come back to you, Shamima. What was the main objective of yesterday's media engagement with the president?
Well, you wanted it and we delivered. If you recall, in the first term, the first administration of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, and even before that, under President Evan Satta Mills, the media engagements were an annual affair. Every year he would create time to meet with the media and ask questions. I think it's one of the foundational principles of any good government, that you are able to put yourself out there and respond to questions from the citizens through the media, who are really the mouthpiece of the citizens, because they interface on a daily basis with the citizens. They know the issues of the citizens. They do their own call-in programs. People share these views. And because the president cannot, meet the citizens directly, the media is a great mouthpiece to have. And so it is just in continuance with that philosophy. And he himself is a communicator and recognizes the importance of speaking directly to the people, of answering their questions directly, of, showing the people that you are open to accountability, you're open to transparency, and you are also open to candid, concessions of challenges. Because when a president puts himself out that way, it's a very vulnerable moment, because his format, as distinct from what we witnessed under the previous administration, who did just about 2 or 3 in the 8-year period, and even with those engagements, they would often line up ministers, and when there's a question relating to a particular ministry, the former president then Nana Akufo-Addo would invite the minister to answer. But you have seen the president consistently, during the campaign period, he had a media encounter. Most of you were there and you watched. He has such a deep appreciation of every aspect of his government and every sector. So he speaks to the issues directly and he communicates the answers directly. So we should have done this earlier. We had billed him to conclude the first phase of the accountability series, which was really reflecting on our first 6 months in office. Unfortunately, this tragedy happened and it pushed it, a bit forward. So hopefully next year we'll do it a bit earlier. But yes, it will be a key feature of the Mahama administration. Yesterday, Ghanaians had another unique opportunity to come up close and personal with the president they voted for. The president of humility, of humor, of seriousness, of deep, deep character in terms of competence and, and understanding and appreciation of the issues. And I'd like to say thank you to the people of Ghana for the feedback, even including the media. I think the program was well organized. We take the commendations, but we also take the feedback on what to do differently next time. There are many people who feel that we should have been able to take more questions. I think that when we go back into the review meeting, we would see which of the suggestions that have come to us we would, deploy in our next program. But generally, it was a great, great showing, and we are very happy with the president. He makes our work very easy.
Now, you talked about how vulnerable the president, had to make himself by opening himself up to some of the questions, and some of the questions were very direct, very hard-hitting. These were not sugar-coated by any means. What were your thoughts on the quality of questions that were put forth by journalists?
I think, to be fair, the set of questions that we had from this crop of journalists can be said to be very, very great questions in comparison. So you would see that the public is not hitting at journalists for not asking.
In fact, this morning they say they've been giving us a lot of kudos. They say we've asked the right questions. We're not complimenting shirts and hairstyle.
Exactly. And so it means the media is also learning. You're also taking feedback because previous experiences from similar encounters have also led to you also receiving your own criticism that you could have asked better or harder questions. So we all agree. And there's also an agreement that this was not a cooked event. As you can see, there was a very open, transparent event, and questions were picked randomly. We didn't know what question anybody was going to ask, and so that is a very deep level of confidence in what you're doing to allow that to happen. So it's reset, and we need to do these things in a more transparent and honest manner. We don't deceive ourselves as a government, and we don't deceive the general public. And I think that we've all done well. We've all done well.
Is there ever any apprehension with that? Because as you mentioned, it was an open forum. You don't know who is going to ask what. What was the strategy then going into an engagement like that where you don't have the opportunity to screen what the questions are going to be?
Because your number one, what do you call it? I think that it's the persona of the president that gives all of us the confidence that he will weather whatever storm comes his way. Why? He's done this for the longest. He understands the issues more than even sometimes his ministers. You know, he's been in cabinet meetings from when he was deputy communications minister to vice president. He chaired cabinet meetings, and someone was relating an experience of how he used to read the cabinet briefings back to back, you know, because often President Mills will even let him chair cabinet meetings. So he understands historical context to issues that are still germane today, more than even those who are at the helm of affairs. So that level of knowledge and expertise, and also his own experience in communication, is all we require to trust that he would be fine. And he was.
Now, on Tuesday, when I opened up the phone lines asking members of the public what it is that they will, if they had the opportunity, they would ask the president. Top of that agenda had to do with, I'm sure no surprises here, oral.
Yes.
Issues about accountability, issues about corruption.
True.
And that came up yesterday in the media engagement with journalists asking about the pace of prosecutions, also the issue of plea bargaining. I don't know whether it's too early to assess from where you sit how those answers have gone down with members of the general public. There's a lot of thirst for accountability, especially given what we now know of some of the happenings in the last administration. How do you respond to that? And I'm sure it's something that you get asked quite a lot. Every time I open the phone lines, the number one issue is the state of prosecutions. We were told one day, one scandal. In fact, we lived it, we felt it, and now the people, I don't want to use this expression, but they want blood.
I'm happy you say you lived it, you felt it. So we didn't cook up the scandals. The scandals were in our face. So there are questions to, answer. And those questions will be answered. And if you hear His Excellency, he understands the pulse of the Ghanaian better than most. The Ghanaian public is sometimes quite complex. In the same vein that they demand of you action, if you don't find a balance and you act in response to the extent of action that they request from you, you're going to get the same backlash from the media, from the same citizens in your attempts to act. Very soon they will start saying that, this is disproportionate to the issue at hand. Just look at what is happening with regards to some of the inflammable comments and statements. Monday I was on a platform with an MPP communicator. She sat on national TV and said that because of heightened insecurity, she has heard prophecies that Ghana is heading towards a civil war. That's very irresponsible. And in another time, that kind of comment would invite a certain response. Do you see it? Especially given the history of the party she's representing. They have a very checkered history with regards to what they did when they were in opposition, right from pre-independence through to Nkrumah's period. I don't want to repeat all of those things. So the point is that when in doubt, allow due process. Because at the end of the day, due process is what will vindicate you as a leader. You must find a balance between the sentiment, the anger of the people, and the protection of the core values of our democracy. Because we are a democracy. We run a constitution. there are constitutional processes towards the exacting of justice. We must not breach them. Look at the Chief Justice's case.
Right.
Look at the insistence on the side of the president to follow due process. Where he varied it was when he allowed the Chief Justice to receive copy of the petition and even extended the time that she could review that petition and respond.
Right.
You see, it communicates someone who at heart, as he said yesterday, is a real Democrat true and true. Never going to abuse the excessive mandate that has been given, the overwhelming mandate that has been given him in response to one of the questions. That is this Chief Justice incident and also the 2/3 majority we now control in Parliament, will it not turn him into a supreme leader who would be expected to use those powers, in a whimsical and capricious manner? He responded as John Mahama would always respond, and as you have known him to be. He has no bone of vindictiveness in his body. But what must be done will be done in this reset agenda. So what we have to just let the wheels of justice do grind slowly.
And that's what a lot of citizens have become impatient with. They say it's too slow.
But they must understand that if they were in those shoes, they would also expect that level of due process. The matter is in the court. Most of the matters have been brought to court. This National Signals Bureau matter, Eduboy,
right,
it's in court. The courts went on their legal vacation.
That's right.
When they return, the issues will be presented. The Attorney General has engaged the most. But people say that he's talking, he's not acting, but he's acting. And when he leaves the vacuum, you believe nothing is happening. So when he comes also to present to you the actions that are being taken, towards the justice that you are demanding, then you say he's talking too much. That's why I've told you that
it's
when
a
you're
balancing
dealing
act
with the Ghanaian, you have to find a very fine balance, between meeting their expectations and doing the right thing. So what we must be happy about is the president's pronouncement that however people are thinking or intending to influence or subvert, what he knows is what he knows. That nobody found guilty of any offense will be left off the hook. If they go through the process and the court determines an outcome in their favor, that too we should be willing to accept. Do you understand? And that is why the Attorney General keeps saying that he needs to investigate all the matters to the point where he is almost sure that he would get the outcome of guilt that he is pursuing. Because, of course, before the Attorney General goes to court, he would have had to come to the point that he is confident that wrongdoing has happened and now seeking the court to pronounce same. Do you see it? So please, fellow Ghanaians, if I may borrow that word, let us allow the due process to happen. Unless we think that there is some complicity on the side of the president, there is none. There's no evidence of such complicity. In fact, the evidence we keep having at cabinet, sometimes I wish that you people would hear what happens at cabinet meetings.
Invite us.
The kind of interrogation that goes on at cabinet meetings. So every minister knows that if you go and collude to do or protect a wrongdoer, you yourself, your job will be at stake. Do you see it? So please, oral is here to stay. The investigations will happen. Those with merit enough to come before the courts will be brought to the courts, and those matters will be determined. The national service matter, briefs have been prepared, so they will come to court. People were brought to court. So please, we must crawl before we walk, before we fly. We cannot. There was a time I read something that eggs must be hatched, not cracked. It's the same with justice. It's a process.
Right.
We must go through the process. So please continue to support His Excellency. By all means, continue to ask for accountability, because accountability sits right in the middle of our reset agenda, Resetting Ghana manifesto and agenda. So if we don't bring you the results from accountability, what are we coming to tell you in 2020, in 2028? So we ourselves are keeping our eye on the ball, and we are following the process.
Certainly, and we watch this space very keenly. And from you all, tomorrow we'll discuss this in some more detail if you were satisfied with some of the answers. Plea bargaining also came up quite a number of times when the phone lines were opened. If you listen to the president, he says it's also a legal tool that is actually in force and in place.
Not absolute. The Attorney General was offering various options, and in all jurisdictions that run, a court system, it is one of the avenues to either, one, get more information about what has been done, to be able to catch the bigger fishes. So it is a tool in the toolbox, that every Attorney General, has and should choose to use as and when. It was not communicating that is the only option, that he was going to deploy in the execution of justice from those who have done wrongdoing. So please, let us not also jump the gun before the point. So yes, there are some of the cases, if you cannot see criminal intent behind those, by this misdemeanor or, appropriation or something like that, and you can get those resources back, I think we must get those resources back. Some time ago, there was this law, proceeds of crime.
Right.
Even when you are prosecuted and convicted on a crime, the state has the power to retrieve the proceeds of those crimes. So these are all options that the Attorney General, in due time, in the fullness of time, I know we don't have all the time, but as far as the law process allow it, we would see a certain end to some of these cases that are in court and are coming to court when the legal year opens.
Certainly. And Shamima, I want us to just finish up in about a minute or two, and I can't let you go without bringing this up. It was very topical when I opened up the phone lines, the issue of Galamsey. And the president answered a question regarding declaring a state of emergency. He says that there are still tools in the toolbox that are yet to be used, and that fellow Ghanaians should exercise patience. Once we've exhausted everything in the arsenal, we can explore this issue of a state of emergency.
We don't even want to get there. This morning I was saying on your television, and please, if you're listening to me, please be open-hearted, even as you hear what I'm about to say. I was indicating that in the previous administration, 8 good years, we all never started demanding from them a call for a state of emergency. Not in their first term, not even in the beginning of their second term. Even though Galamsey challenges and the advocacies around illegal mining transcends even the NPP administration, and that is an honest fact. We've been dealing with illegal mining for a very long time.
That's right.
But, it was crude illegal mining. It didn't take up the sophistication that we witnessed in the last, 8 years. So it was upon the failure of the leadership and its interventions that you and I, the media, the stakeholders, so it's not NDC that called, it was all of us that were stakeholders in the conversation that came to a conclusion that where we had reached towards the dying embers of their administration, upon 5 different campaigns that even led to the loss of life of Major Mahama, if you recall, upon the resignation or the removal of an environment minister, Professor Frimpong Boateng, who wrote a report that he was being frustrated at the highest level in his fight against Galamsey. We came to the point of demanding a declaration of a state of emergency and the repeal of LI 2462 because we saw that in that second term, the president had signed as provided for in LI 2462 that a president is the one that can grant, leases, like sign on the leases to companies to go into the forest reserve.
Right.
And that is what brought about the onslaught, the proliferation. It didn't used to be like that. And so the demands for the LI repeal of the LI was to, amongst other things, reduce the powers of the president to grant those, access to the forest reserves, which then opened up illegal activity also in the forest reserves. It was also now to force his hand then to declare a state of emergency and then deploy, because that would have been he would have been bound then to act. Then Ghanaians voted them out and voted a new president in. Are we saying that when you come into a situation, you will not have a list of your solutions? And should the president not have some space to deploy his own interventions, given that we know that there is commitment from his side? There's not been any complicity on his side as yet. His Minister of Lands and Natural Resources has not made any damning claims. His Environment Minister has not made any damning claims about complicity or frustration from elements sitting at the presidency. In fact, he has come out to say that any member of the NDC found engaging in illegal mining will be brought to book. In fact, 2 members of the NDC were announced as persons of interest in an ongoing investigation.
That's right.
Please, are these signs the same as what we saw? So we don't even want to get to the point of a state of emergency declaration. He wants to deploy the interventions we have now through the National Anti-Illegal Mining, the NIMOS program, working collaboratively. He explained that he's not saying that the police will not go back, because people were now using the shadow or the cloak of the police operations to do illegal activity.
That's
and
right.
It became more chaotic. You also brought reports of the chaos that we're seeing. Even legal small-scale miners were literally being hounded by persons who just appear and say that we are IGP task force. So we needed to retreat that and then sit around the table. And so IGP must work and would be working with NIMOS, because that NIMOS is the joint committee, includes national security, includes Ghana Police Service, so that we would have a centralized defense system in the fight against galamsey. Please, we can hear the urgency of the demands. We appreciate the concerns and the demands for more concerted action. By way of information, when you declare a state of emergency across multiple districts, please know that the operational actions that have to be undertaken in a state of emergency are already being taken. It will be the seizures, it will be the clampdown, it will be literally arresting people, confiscating items, only that you are deploying extra military, and restricting movement. Many of these communities, as we speak, are also farming communities.
Right.
So unless we try our approach and touch wood, not touch wood, we get to a point where we think that things are out of hand. But we are making progress.
Have you given yourselves a time limit by which you want to see these improvements?
NIMOS has they have a work plan.
Right.
They have a work plan. But my sister, this is also a very complex matter, that involves multiple stakeholders. And so whilst we are at it, the key stakeholders need to also continue the advocacy, the mindset that makes this quick money venture more attractive than other options. It's something we need to deal with. And that is why the president had directed the commissioning of the responsible cooperative mining, the launch of which took away the lives of our compatriots and those, servicemen. May their souls continue to rest in peace. They were going there to Obuasi to launch the alternative.
That's right.
To the irresponsible mining, where mining corporations had agreed to cede off some of their concessions so that the young miners would be given those concessions to to mine, because what they are mining is not in as much commercial values as those, bigger mining firms. And they would literally also mentor, because those concessions are close to their concessions. So they will keep an eye and help us do sustainable, responsible mining. Apart from that, not all the 4 million who are currently engaged in small to medium scale mining, including illegal mining, can go into alternative mining, concessions.
Right.
We have to do other things for them. We have to find them different skills, and we have to put them in different kinds of employment. Because the danger is that when young people see big money too early, it becomes a disincentive.
That's right.
For them to want to pursue any other alternative that does not give them that amount of money, which is why we must stop almost immediately the influx of children going into this illegal mining. There must be an age limit. Children should either be in school, or they should be in training, or they should be in education, or some form of skill training, or in some apprenticeship program.
Right.
So they don't find their way to the mine pits. That is what His Excellency was respectfully trying to communicate. If it did not convince you too much, let's just give him the benefit of the doubt. But by all means, keep the advocacy going.
Absolutely.
Keep the fire burning, so that we don't sleep easy. We sleep knowing that there's fire under our bottoms, and we need to act to deliver results.
Certainly, Shamima, and we keep that fire burning under your bottoms day and night, 24/7.
Do it nicely.
Shamima Muslim is the Deputy Presidential Spokesperson joined us this morning to dissect yesterday's engagement. Always grateful for your time. Thank you so much for speaking with us this morning.
Thank you.
And as I mentioned,
thanks I'll be given. The most I'm a living while I'm living, to the Father I will pray. Only Him know how we.
all right, let me jump back onto the phone lines and let's speak with Stephen Osei Achiao. Mr. Osei Achiao, good morning again once more to you. Thank you so much for your patience. Hello. All right, I suspect we might have lost Mr. Osei Achiao. We'll reconnect with him in due course.
People who are suffering bad, another toll to the poor.